before we get into the algebra of adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, and solving what we're going to call rational expressions, we're going to take a look at like kind of the elementary version, like how do we do rationals? Now, what is a rational? It's a fraction. It's any number that can be written as a fraction. So I've set up here four very simple like add, subtract, multiply, divide, just to make sure that that we can do the different things that we're going to be talking about with algebra with just regular numbers. So here I have 3/5 plus 7/3. So in order to add fractions, we need a common denominator or a least common multiple. It's difficult to add things that are divided into 5 pieces to things that are divided into 3 pieces. There's no point of comparison. So to get the least common multiple, the fastest way to get a common multiple is to multiply the denominators. 5 times 3 is 15, but you won't always get the smallest one by doing that. But that is a shortcut that you can use if you're not willing to really think about it. But the real way to get your common multiple is to take 5, and you could list the multiples. This is one way to do it. And do the same thing with 3. List your multiples of 3. And the first one and smallest one that they have in common, is the one that you want. So we have a common denominator of 15. Now, how do I get a 15 here? Well, I'm going to multiply the bottom by 3 and the top by 3. Now, why can I do that? Because I'm essentially multiplying top and bottom by 1. 3 over 3 is 1, so I haven't really changed the magnitude or size of anything. So I have 9 over 15 plus this one, I need a 15 in the denominator, so 3 times 5, and then 7 times 5. So I'm going to have 35 over 15. So now I know that might be difficult to see. I want to show you how I'm actually going to be writing these like as far as in algebra as a shortcut. So I would say like equals, and I know my common denominator is 15. So I would say 3 times 3 plus, and then I have 7 times 5. And this is going to be a shortcut that we'll just use in order to make our lives a little bit easier when we get to the algebra. So we'll have 15, we have 9 plus 35, and then that's going to equal 44 all over 15. Maybe I need a different background, but that's okay. All right, going on. So subtraction is going to work the same way. So my least common denominator for 7 and 2 is 14. Now, the smallest you can get for a common denominator is going to be the largest of these two. So I couldn't possibly have a common denominator that's less than 7. Okay, it has to be 7 or higher. Same thing over here. I couldn't possibly have a common denominator that's less than the 5. All right. So anyways, 14. Now showing, so 7 times 2 will give me the 14, so 2 times 2. And then 2 times 7 gives me 14, so like that. So I'm going to have 2 times 2 plus 1, or not plus, it's a minus. Now follow the order of operations, and we're going to have 4 minus 7, which is negative 3/14. And we're done right there. Okay, so now for multiplication, we don't need a common denominator. And the basic way to do a multiplication is going to be to do top times top over bottom times bottom. But there is some things that I can do in order to make it a little bit easier, and that's cross cancel. So if I look crossways, I look at 3 and 9, and I ask myself, is there something that I could divide both 3 and 9 by? And I can divide them both by 3. So 3 divided 3 is 1, and 9 divided 3 is 3. Now I'll look crossways, 2 and 8. Now I can only cross cancel. This is very important. I can only cross cancel if it's multiplication. Only cross cancel if it's multiplication. I cannot cross cancel in any other circumstance. It must be multiplication. So let's take a look here. 8 and 2. I can divide those both by 2. So 1 and 4. Now I'll do top times top. So when I do top times top, 1 times 1 is 1, and 4 times 3 is 12. 1/12. Now let's say I hadn't done that. Let's say I went ahead and did this, and I did top times top. I would have gotten 3 times 2 is 6, and then 8 times 9 is 72. Now these are equivalent fractions, but now I can reduce that. And to reduce, I would divide by 6, and I'd divide by 6. Divide them both, and that would lead me towards this answer right here. All right, so division, I'm not going to get into the whys of the multiplication and division, addition, subtraction. This is just an overview of stuff that you should have done in like an elementary school. So division, the shortcut here is keep, flip, change, KFC. We're going to keep the first fraction. So 5/7. We're going to flip the second fraction. So flip that one. And then we're going to change from division to multiplication. Now, my shortcut way of thinking through that is the opposite of multiplication is division. So we flip the second fraction, and by flipping it, that's the reciprocal. So we switch to multiplication. That's the shortcut, lame way of thinking through it. Okay, so now I can cross cancel. Now, I cannot cross cancel through division, but I've switched to multiplication, so now I can. So I can cross cancel right there, divide those both by 7, so I get 1 and 2. Divide these both by 3, and I get an answer of 10 right there. Okay, so I'm going to really quick do a what if scenario. So what if I had, like, I'm doing a multiplication or division. Let's say I had 5 sevenths divided by 10. Okay, so now I need to KFC. I need to remember that this 10 is technically over 1. So that would be 5/7, and I'm going to flip that. So that'd be 1/10. And now I can cross cancel 1/2. And I have 1/14 as my answer. Okay, let's take a look at a complex fraction. So a complex fraction is a fraction within a fraction. So right here on the left, I have one set up. I have a fraction within a fraction, 2/3 over 4/9. And what we need to remember is all this means to do is to divide. So I'm going to rewrite this as a division. This will be 2/3 divided by 4/9, which is going to KFC 2/3 times, flip this, 9/4. I will now cross cancel. So 2 and 4, divide those both by 2, and divide these both by 3. And we will get, as our final answer, top times top, 3, bottom times bottom, 2, 3/2. We're done. So for fractions, we do want lowest terms, and for algebra, we do not want mixed numbers. We want improper fractions. Okay, so let's take a look right here. This is a fraction within a fraction. This 7 would be like over 1. So I have basically 7/1 divided by 2/14. Now I could reduce that 2/14, right? That 2/14 is simply 1/7. I could divide both of those by 2 to reduce that. So then I'm going to keep with change. Now notice it would be very, very tempting to cross cancel those 7s. But remember, we cannot cross cancel except if we're in multiplication. So we're going to keep the first fraction. We'll flip the second fraction. Now it's top times top, bottom times bottom, and we get our answer 49/1. Or just 49. Last question. So we have 3/5 over 10. That's going to be 3/5 times divided by 10/1. Keep the first fraction. Flip the second fraction. No cross canceling. So it would have been very tempting to cross cancel this 5 and 10, but can't. So multiplication only. Top times top, bottom times bottom. And there's our answer. Okay, let's wrap up complex fractions. If we have fractions within fractions, then we have like something to do. Like I want to work on this numerator and this denominator separately before I do anything else. So I want to combine these two things together. So just down here, like in this corner, I'll go ahead and do that. I have 2/3 plus 1/4. I need a common denominator. It's 12. So I think, what do I need to multiply this 3 by to get 12? That's 4. So 2 times 4 is 8. Now plus. What do I need to multiply 4 by to get 12? 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. And I get 11/12 for that fraction. So equals 11/12. Now I am dividing. So now I need to do 1/5 minus 1/2. Our common denominator is 10. So this fraction, 5 times 2, so 1 times 2, so 2 minus this one, 2 times 5 gives me 10, so 1 times 5. Okay, so I subtract that and get -3/10. So divided by -3/10. Now I'm going to keep flip change. So I'm going to keep the first fraction, 11/12. I'll flip the second fraction. Now in the end, we will put the negative on the outside. So we can cross cancel the 12 and the 10 and divide those both by 2. We cannot cross cancel over here. So I'm going to get -55 all over 18. Now I did move the negative up to the numerator. We don't like to have negatives in the denominator. Okay, so just to talk about that, so if I have a negative, let's say I have A over B, that I could write it like that. I could write it like that. Or I could write it like that. And this last way we don't like. One of these two other ways. I tend to prefer it this way. But it doesn't matter. Just not that last way. We don't like that way. Okay, so this one, again, we're going to do all the combining that we can. We have to do the 6/5 minus the 2/3. Our common denominator is 15. So I'd multiply the 5 by 3 to get 15. So I need to multiply the 6 by 3, get 18. Minus, I need to multiply the 3 by 5. So the 2 times 5. And that's going to give me 8/15. So in the numerator, I have 8/15. Okay, now the denominator I'm multiplying. So let's go ahead and do that multiplication down here in the corner. I can cross cancel the 3's and get 1. And I can cross cancel the 8 and 2. And then when I finish multiplying, I get 1/4. So all over 1/4. So I'm going to do 8/15 divided by 1/4. I'm going to keep flip change. I'll continue up here. So 8/15 times 1, or 4 over 1. I flipped. See, very tempting to cross cancel right there. Can't, only if it's multiplication. So we flip the second fraction. So we get 32 all over 15. And we're good. All right, that wraps up our intro to fractions. Of course, for algebra class, we are focusing on actually like new variable expressions. So we'll get to that later.